التجول راح يصير الساعة 6 يعني بعد مساء وراح تبدي عمليات تستهدف العناصر الإرهابية.
Ead Alawi, the interim Prime Minister of Iraq, has just unleashed 20,000 Iraqi and US troops on Fallujah.
اللي نقتحم بس المواقع اللي بيها هذول المجرمين ونلقي القبض عليهم ومن يقتل فلا جهنم وبئس المصير. فشدوا حيلكم. ان شاء الله.
Alawi has promised elections in January, and in the struggle to stabilise the country, he's shown he's prepared to be ruthless.
Using extreme force against the population fits within his philosophy or his understanding of Iraqi history. He's a pragmatist, and in order to rule in Iraq, as the Americans have found out, the Allies have found out, you've got to kill people. It's that simple. He knew it, we know it now.
Ead Alawi will have another Saddam government for Iraq. He is so power hungry, and he was always power hungry. The main reason he went back to Iraq is to get power.
He's an unlikely political leader in a sense. I think he's made himself, at least from the American standpoint, the indispensable man.
Once a spy for the Iraqi regime in Europe, Ead Alawi went on to play a key role in selling the war in Iraq to the West. Although he's operated out of the public eye for most of his career, since his meteoric rise to power, disturbing rumours and allegations about his past have begun to surface. Tonight, Dateline tells the story of how Saddam's man in London became America's man in Baghdad.
I remember him and most of the students who went through Baghdad Medical School between 1961 and 1971. They know Ead Alawi very well. So we have to get her authorization and a consent for repair as well.
Dr. Haifa Azawi now runs this obstetrics and gynecology practice in Los Angeles. But in the 60s, she studied at Baghdad University with Alawi. In 1970, like many other Iraqi medical students, they both went to London after graduating. She was close to the family of Alawi's first wife and recalls that he was a prominent member of the Iraqi Ba'ath Party and a political ally of Saddam Hussein.
I knew that he was on a big salary from the Ba'ath Party, and they helped him a lot in England.
How did you know that? How did you know he was on a big salary from the Ba'ath Party?
We used to go sometimes to the Iraqi embassy, and we hear from the employees that, so-and-so is a Ba'ath Party representative, he's getting a big money.
The foot soldiers of Saddam's regime in Baghdad also remember Alawi. Dateline tracked down a former Iraqi intelligence officer who was stationed in London in the mid-80s. Now back in Baghdad, Wissam Khazal remembers Alawi helping to spy on fellow students in Europe for the former Iraqi government.
إنه البعثيين كانوا منتشرين كطلاب منتشرين في أغلب دول أوروبا. وهم مصادر هذولا.
When Ead Alawi went to London, was he also a good source of information for Iraqi intelligence?
ما تقبل غلط.
Yes.
But Iraqi intelligence was doing much more than just gathering information in Europe in the 1970s. Abdul Razak al-Naif, a former Iraqi Prime Minister, was gunned down outside this London hotel in 1978. It was the third attempt on his life, and just one of a string of violent attacks on Iraqi dissidents in Europe. There's no hard evidence to show Alawi planned any of these attacks, But Haifa Azawi says his family spoke of his involvement.
He one time left the house and his father-in-law was visiting them, and he leave the house, then he come back to the door and he tell his father-in-law, don't open the door to the mailman, and if you see any box delivered in the house, don't accept it because it might be a bomb.
David Ignatius, a journalist at the Washington Post, is in regular contact with Alawi and has been closely following his career for the last 15 years. He believes that Alawi must have approved or at least known of the attacks on Iraqi dissidents in the early 70s.
Even if he did not himself, kill people or, plot their assassination, he certainly was witting about some just monstrous acts. I don't see how you can get around that. I mean, if we think that Saddam Hussein was, a man who governed by torture and cruelty, someone who was as senior in the Ba'ath Party as Ayad Alawi was, doesn't have clean hands from that period. He was part of a machine that did monstrous things.
Eventually, this machine turned on Alawi himself. Saddam Hussein began to suspect Alawi was working against him in London, and in 1978, Alawi was brutally attacked as he slept.
He was attacked with a hatchet in bed with his wife, and his leg was nearly severed, his chest was cut open with a hatchet. His wife never recovered from the trauma of that. Certainly by then, he was well gone from the party.
No one knows exactly when or why Alawi turned against Saddam. But when Wissam Khazal was sent to London in the mid-80s, he discovered Alawi was being cultivated by both MI6 and the CIA.
هو علاقته بالMI6 قائمة لا محال يعني.
His link, Alawi's link with the MI6 is a must.
هذا ما يختلفون عليه اثنين.
They are sure about it. I mean, him and his superior.
أنا متأكد شلون هو قاعد قدامي هسه. أنا متأكد إنه اياد علاوي لديه اتصال بالMI6 والMI6 رتب اياد علاوي ترتيب وقدموا هدية إلى CIA.
During the 80s, while Saddam was still in favour in the West, Alawi kept a low profile. But his moment came after the first Gulf War in 1991. With funding from the US, he set up an opposition group, the Iraqi National Accord. By the mid-90s, it had offices in Jordan and Kurdistan.
He was trying to create this network. That's what his group, the Iraqi National Accord, was. It was a network of military officers, intelligence officers, Ba'ath Party members. Unfortunately, it was never as widespread or as strong as Alawi liked to claim.
This was underscored by a disastrous coup attempt that Alawi launched from Amman in June 1996. Alawi had claimed that once the coup began, it would spark mass defections from the Iraqi military.
That's one of the greatest myths there ever was. There's like 4 people involved in this network out of Amman. I've seen, the planning for this thing, this division and that division. There was no contact between Alawi and these division commanders. That's just the end of story, He had a whole list of all these divisions. He said he had intermediaries, he could get to these people, and they're all ready to move simultaneously on Baghdad. And he had a couple officers in the army. There was no 96 coup.
Bob Bayer now lives high in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. But in the mid-90s, he was sent into the mountains of northern Iraq by the CIA. He worked closely with Iad Alawi and his arch-rival Ahmed Chalabi to try to overthrow Saddam Hussein. But according to Bayer, Alawi's plot was doomed from the start.
Saddam hears about these things. He controlled this 96 thing from the beginning. And, Saddam said, round up the usual suspects and make it a warning to the other people, execute them in public or in front of their families usually. But, there was no, just get out of your mind. There's very few things I'm certain about. but there was no imminent coup against Saddam in '96.
Whatever his strengths and weaknesses, he was not a successful coup plotter. You know, I mean, the Brits and then later the Americans kept hoping that he would be able to deliver, you know, a strike against Saddam that he was not able to deliver. That showed in part how good and tough Saddam's own intelligence services were, but it also showed that Alawi's network was weaker than perhaps he was